Your ears do not deceive you. You have just entered the Cryptid Creator Corner brought to you by your friends at Comic Book Yeti. So without further ado, let's get on to the interview.
When we started this podcast, we knew inclusion and diversity were going to be at the forefront of what we wanted to do with it. Now, 2.5 years in, that mission hits home for me. Being disabled myself, I know the likelihood of me getting to a con or doing, frankly, most of the other things that can bring the comics community together is not likely in the cards, but this podcast has connected me with people in ways I never would have imagined possible. I know the similar challenges disabled creators face trying to get their work seen, so it should come as no surprise that I'm excited about the new, unseen, unheard Disability and Neurodivergence Anthology on Kickstarter. This 64-page, 12-story anthology covers a wide range of genres, including slice of life, horror, sci-fi, fantasy, and romance, and features at least 50% of each creative team being comprised of people who are neurodivergent or have a disability. I know the editors and can assure you it's in good hands. And after having seen a few sample pages myself, I'm excited to see the rest of what all these amazing creators have cooked up. If they do a second one, you best believe I'm submitting. I'll drop a link in the show notes for you, or you can find them on Kickstarter. Search for Unseen, Unheard. Please consider supporting it and our community. Everyone deserves to be seen. Thanks. Y'all, Jimmy, the Chaos Goblin strikes again. I should have known better than to mention I was working on my DC Universe meets Ravenloft hybrid D&D campaign on social media. My bad. He goes and tags a bunch of comics creators we know, and now I have to get it in gear and whip this campaign into shape so we can start playing. Another friend chimes in, "Are you going to make maps?" It's fair to say it's been a while since I put something together, so I guess? It was then that I discovered Arkenforge. If you don't know who Arkenforge is, they have everything you need to make your TTRPG more fun and immersive, allowing you to build, play, and export animated maps, including in-person fog of war capability that lets your players interact with maps as the adventure unfolds while you, the DM, get the full picture. Now I'm set to easily build high-res animated maps, saving myself precious time and significantly adding nuance to our campaign. That's a win every day in my book. Check them out at arkenforge.com and use the discount code YETI5 to get $5 off. I'll drop a link in the show notes for you, and big thanks to Arkenforge for partnering with our show. I think I'm going to make Jimmy play a Goblin Warlock just to get even.
Hello and welcome to Comic Book Yeti's Cryptid Creator Corner. I am one of your hosts, Jimmy Gasparo, and boy, do I have a special guest for you today. And I really like when I have a guest coming on and in like the research process, I kind of discover some things, and we're going to talk about it because I've been listening to Canadian rock band One Bad Son quite a bit the past few days. But I have writer, artist, musician, rocker, actor, I think too.
A little bit of that in there, yeah.
Shane Connery Volk. Shane, welcome to the podcast.
Jimmy, so good to hang with you. I mean, I've watched the show, but it's nice to actually chat with you one-to-one like this. Is great. And thanks for the intro. You made me sound a lot cooler than I am.
No, I don't believe that at all. I don't know if I did you justice, but
you nailed it, man.
So I'm a huge fan of Nottingham. David Azan, the writer of Nottingham, has been on the podcast, and
also one of the most beautiful human beings that's just ever existed. I absolutely love that guy. Hazan, shout out, buddy.
Yeah, David is great. I love every time I get to talk to him. So he's been on the podcast twice, and just a huge fan of that book in particular.
Awesome.
And I mean, I've said it a lot on the podcast, but I'm a big fan of Mad Cave, especially this year's their 10th anniversary year. I've interviewed quite a few Mad Cave creators this year, and they're really just, the books that they're coming out with have been fantastic. Some of the stuff that they've been doing, both their original stuff and bringing back stuff like Flash Gordon and Dick Tracy, and it's really been wonderful to see. But like David,
they're doing awesome stuff. Yeah, they're doing great stuff there right now.
And like David, you were also a 2019 Mad Cave Studios talent search winner. in the art category, David was writing, and then so what Mad Cave did, they've done different things with like the talent search winners, but they kind of paired the two of you up, and uh, from that came Nottingham, which I'm sure listeners are familiar with, but it's this unbelievably like interesting take on the Robin Hood story that we all know, but it's centered on the sheriff of Nottingham. As we record this in August, we are a few weeks away, I think 2 weeks away from issue 15, the last issue
The
of
big finale,
Nottingham.
the last one. That's crazy.
And it's been, I don't know if it's a surprise hit. I mean, I think it's definitely a hit, but I didn't know if anyone expected it to kind of be as big as it did when it
was
came
a surprise.
out.
Trust me. There was no, there was nothing on it, man. It was like, it was our first shot, David's first book, my first book. We were just doing our best. So the fact that it, for an indie book, as big as it's gotten is, and three series later, like crazy.
Yeah. I mean, it just, there's so many books on the market. I mean, the listeners are tired of me saying it probably, but this is like a new golden age of comics. If you like anything, there is a story out there for you. There's so much to choose from, whether or not it's traditional comics or manga or webtoons, whatever it might be. And so the point of me saying that is it's kind of rare for, a book to get more than like one arc, like 5 or 6 issues. You really have to stand out, and kind of gone are the days of really long running series. I can kind of count them on one hand right now, the sagas and the something is killing the children, type of stuff. So 15 issues is fantastic.
And that's due to the fans, like you said. It's there's tons of stuff out there. I mean, it's a great time, but it's tough because it's in some ways it's easier than it's ever been to get your stuff out there with Kickstarter and everything else. And even if you're able to get a publisher, they're putting out a ton of books, and there's a ton of really good books, right? So you're right, man. There's a lot for everybody, and it's real tough to get your slice of that pie. So the fact that like fans jumped on it, and then that just kind of grew and blew up, and now we got this kind of rabid little fan base of crazy Nottingham fans. So like honored beyond belief. Like what a way to jump into the industry, right? Like totally unexpected. So
yeah. Well, I think also it helps that I think, I mean, David's writing is fantastic. I don't want to take anything away from David's writing, but
no, heap it on me. He gets enough praise.
That's right. And you're the one here on the podcast right now. Your style is so, I feel like distinctive. I'm hard pressed to kind of find anybody else doing comic book art like right now that I could kind of like lump you in the category with. Like, there's a lot of artists who are doing like great work, but some artists have a similar style, and that's like absolutely fine. But uh, I mean, the only person that I think maybe has some similarity, and I don't, I'm not like an art critic or anything, but like Jason Sean Alexander, maybe it's the 3 name thing, but what he's doing with Philadelphia, I feel like there's some similarity here, but
he's one of my absolute favorite, honestly. Yeah. So great pick. That was a real good pull for sure.
Oh, good. But your style is so distinctive. There is, it's hard for me to describe, but there's like, a roughness to it, like a shadowy, like sketchiness to it that it messy is like the wrong word, but if I can use messy,
like messy's right.
In like a good way, it's, but you don't lose anything in terms of like the facial acting. I mean, there are some, especially in the last few issues, like there are just some panels of like the sheriff that are like close-ups, and I mean, just the detail that you get on his face, and like some of the absolute like brutality
He's
of
got a lot of
some of these
angst. Yeah,
fights.
the sheriff, he's got a lot of angst. He's having every series he is having an increasingly worse day, and I try to like reflect that in the drawing for sure. And honestly, man, like any of those words work, right? Messy, it's a bit sketchy. Like the truth is, I spend a lot of time on my layouts, and I spend a lot of time I kind of I'm inking my own stuff, right? So I don't
Yeah,
really have like a layout pencil, like distinct penciling stage to ink. It's kind of like really I go hard on the layouts, and then I really like get things worked out. Then when I go to ink, it's just kind of as quick as I can go. Like I like to get the energy, as much energy as I can get. And so that means, things come out sometimes how they come out. Like I try to keep it, I don't want anything to look wrong per se. Like, you got to know what's going on. You have to be able to follow the action and all of that. But it's like, it's 2D art. So you're trying to get some emotion, right? Like, it's
yeah,
funny. So, somebody that, there's a panel in issue 14. Really good friend of mine actually pointed out something funny, and it's Robin Hood, and he's leaning off the side of the horse and he's shooting an arrow. And
yeah,
as I'm drawing it, it defies gravity. It's not right in this way of like, you couldn't actually physically do that. And this guy was lovely human being was like, "Oh, I don't know. There's something about this panel that's weird." I'm like, "Yeah, look, it looks like he's gonna fall off the horse." He's like, "Well, aren't you going for realism?" He said, and I said, "That's funny because I've heard that before. Like, is this realistic?" I'm like, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on your podcast, but I'm like, it's fucking comic book, dude.
yeah,
That's what I said. Because
yeah,
it's, I kind of there's a lot of ways to go thinking about like the way I approach art, but really like I just want to, it's 2D art, it's a comic book. It's not going to look like a movie, and it's not supposed to, right? Like you've got to do, if you want to get extra emotion, like when you're pointing out like the sheriff, I've really like leaned into just messing that guy's face up as much as possible. Like when he's pissed off, like it's just, and some people have tried to call me out a bit and saying like, oh, it's almost too exaggerated. I'm like, but I want you to feel, not just see the thing, but you want to
yeah,
feel it a bit. Like you almost want to feel that just like energy coming off the page. So yeah, I appreciate it. And I think like I it was apparent to me very early on, even before I signed up for the Mad Cave talent search, that like house style was not going to be the way I was going to break comics. Like I don't have the skill. Like I don't have those skills to copy or go down the route of like hyper realism and that kind of thing. It's not in my DNA. So I just decided like you're going to do, I want to learn anatomy and do all the stuff and perspective, and you want to make it as visually interesting as possible, but
yeah,
I figured like, you know, you I want to live and die in this medium on just who I am as an artist, not trying to look like somebody else or be like something or even be like what companies want me to look like. It's just like, look, you're going to get my art and you're going to love it or not. And luckily, Mad Cave, specifically, Chris Fernandez, like really got on my side and was like, hey, let's try something a bit different. The
yeah,
guy's got a bit of a weird style, but maybe it'll pair up good with this like crazy medieval like noir we got going on. And, so, yeah. No, I appreciate that you dig it, and it's cool how many people have, given me such positive feedback on my art. Being that, like, man, especially those first issues, like it's pretty rough. My style's like changed a decent amount over 3 series, and but it was cool right from the start. People were kind of like, I think people have been ready for some different stuff. Like, you name like Jason Sean Alexander, who actually has a variant. He's doing the Race the Devil variant cover coming out on the
yeah,
4th. So very cool.
fantastic.
Oh, dude, what a great moment for me. But I love that
Yeah,
kind of stuff, man. Like, it's like when Mike Mignola first came out, people were like, this is weird. I don't get it. But you want that. Like art's supposed to kind of challenge people in a way and like give them something they're not expecting necessarily, right?
right. Well, and also, there's been so many different iterations of some type of, Robin Hood story from when, I was younger and it was the, you know, Kevin Costner Prince of
Yep.
Thieves,
Oh
or,
yeah.
the Disney version with the fox, or I
My
think,
favorite. Yep.
yeah, I think like
All
maybe
the Errol Flynn stuff. Yeah.
Errol
Oh yeah.
Flynn, 10 years ago, they they did another like Robin Hood that was supposed to be
like the modern take.
yeah, like a
Like it was
modern and
like Jamie Foxx and
yes.
yeah.
Yeah, you know, so
Oh,
there's still
and then of course there was, holy shit, there's a lot of them. There was the Russell Crowe one as well. The
oh
Ridley
yeah, that's
Scott
right.
movie. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's been like so many different like iterations, and it's interesting like when you you have to have we've seen this story and the uniqueness of it to be able to say, well, here's something you didn't consider, or here's a new angle, or you know, I know the story of Robin Hood, but maybe I don't.
Yep.
And when you see it on the page the way that you've done it, and I mean when I got the first issue of Nottingham, because I was, you know, I get a lot of different stuff, and I was like, oh, Mad Cave, and they have a talent search, and oh, these are the winners, and this is the book they're putting out, and it had that great cover. Like issue 1 had like such a cool cover, and you're like, oh, what is
Yeah,
this about? Let me check it out.
the bleeding mask with the title Nottingham was kind of like, it grabbed your attention at least. I figured
Yeah.
like that should get people to at least open the book, right?
Yeah, I just felt like I hadn't again, I just felt like I hadn't seen anything, you know, like that. Um, because your style, I, I in my head, I didn't match up your style with essentially what was like a period piece, right?
Yeah.
You know, I thought, oh well, this guy would do some type of like horror book or something, you know, not something,
Yeah.
you know, but it works like so well, and especially when you get something that you think initially challenges your perception, or you're like, oh, this kind of shouldn't work, this style with this story, and like you get in issue 1 and issue 2 and issue 3, and I've lent my volume 1 of Nottingham to a few people, and not
Nice.
everyone has come back and been like, can I have the next one? And I'm like, well, you gotta wait. It's
Yeah.
not, you know, you gotta wait, but
Well,
yeah,
you
I
know,
feel
and
like
that's cool, and
it's so
it's a
good.
testament to David's writing too, right? Because we kind of fit together. I think he envisioned something maybe a bit cleaner, and I was drawing just the way I could draw, especially those first books. That first series was just I've said this probably a million times in interviews, but like I was just holding on for dear life. Like every page David would give me, I'm like, I don't know how to draw that, so like let's give it our best shot. But together it worked, and to me, I love that kind of stuff where, like at this point, people are asking, like, oh, would you want to do a Batman book? Or, of course, I would. That'd be great. But, like, you know, I would definitely not say no to Batman or Spawn, but like, it'd be cool to try like a Superman kind of character. Cause, like, with my style, it's good to stretch that way and see, like, how sometimes you can get too comfortable where, like, horror
Yeah,
looks like this and period pieces look like this, superhero books look like this. And
yeah,
people wonder why sales start to struggle. And it's, well, if you're just giving people what they're expecting to get, you never hit them in that place that's like, oh, shit, I wouldn't, okay. This is,
yeah, right,
even if it's that thing where they're like, I don't know if I like this, but for
yeah,
some reason I kind of can't stop reading it.
yeah.
Like that's what you
I
want to do, right?
I'm like amazed that like your first, you know, all the things that artists, the comic book artists in particular, like kind of, you know, typically might complain about, like, oh, I don't like drawing horses, or I don't like drawing this. Like your first book, and you're like, all right, everybody's on a horse.
Everybody's got a horse. It's all castles. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
yeah. And that was great though, because honestly, I think left to my own devices, I might have just, kind of out of fear and panic been like, well, that I'll do something maybe I'm kind of comfortable with, but it was cool to just, if you want to learn something, just go throw yourself in the deep end. Like
yeah,
when Mad
and I
Cave
mean,
asked if I would do a noir, I was like, I'll do anything. Like I'm dying to be a
yeah.
comic book artist. So just give me stuff and I'll do my best.
And even you also have a book with I mean, so many like action scenes,
Yeah.
you know, so you're not just rendering, you know, it's 2D art, but there has to be a movement and a fluidity, you know, to it from panel to panel. It has
Yeah.
to, you know, it has to like make a little bit of sense, and you kind of have to get like the dimensions right. You have to have that action in it. And you're
Yeah.
so good, I think, with the facial acting, like as I said with the sheriff, but in all the fight scenes, like it's like you're dipping a rag in agony and wringing it out on the page.
That's kind of it, actually. Sometimes, like, because I kind of David, he scripts a hell of a fight scene, but you know, I what's the best way to put this? Like, I wanted to kind of find my own way with different things, right? Because I think sometimes, like, early on, especially, I'd be watching like YouTube drawing videos if I was, okay, like, how am I going to structure a fight scene? And something kept happening that was really like pissing me off. Honestly, Jimmy, it was pissing me off so much. Where like you'd watch a video and it's like, this is how you do a fight scene. Like, this is how you do speed lines. Like, as though like there's one way and that's it. And if you don't do it, it's wrong. And I'm like,
Yeah.
man, I just like I got too much of a rock and roll spirit in me where I'm like, oh, if that's how I'm supposed to do it, like, fuck you, I'm going to do it this other way, right? But it was cool to sort of, you end up following in the footsteps of people like Kirby, and you're like, oh, okay, that's why they solved the problems they did that way, right? But it's kind of cool to approach it on your own, and you look at people that have done it great, but also try to figure your own thing out. Because honestly, again, comic art is a very weird medium where it's 2D art, like you said, and a fight scene is difficult. Like doing a static pose is perfect for comic art. Like the classic hero shot is great.
Sure.
No one's moving. It's great. You can set all your shit up and have it like very planned out. But like a fight scene,
right.
I'm not big into like the way a lot of superhero fight scenes look. It's very, I don't know, they kind of look the same to me. I like the idea, especially with Nottingham, that like everything's just got an extra level of like, it's not realism, but it's almost like I want you to feel a fight as opposed to like, how cool can these people look while they're throwing a punch? It's like, I've been in fights. Like I'm a farm kid. I grew up in small town, Saskatchewan, Canada. Like, it hurts to get punched. It should look like that.
Yeah,
It hurts. It hurts when you punch somebody. Like the idea that like it's not a pretty thing, a fight, right? Like
right.
It's cool the way manga does stuff where it is very like almost like a dance, right? Like it has that, that art has just got such beauty to it, but I can't draw like that. So my thing is like, I'm going to it's brutal. Let's make it look brutal. It might not, and it kind of can't be clean, especially a fight scene. So over the course of the series, I experimented with different ways to kind of do speed lines. I, discovered artists like Bill Sienkiewicz and like my absolute heroes now that, seeing how they tackled different things. And he has a very obviously like Sienkiewicz has a very sketchy kind of style too. And,
Sure.
I love Sean Murphy as well. He's got much more of a manga style. Like it's a lot more of the clean kind of speed line. So I've experimented with a lot of different stuff, but I like just kind of the manic, just make it happen. And if it is just putting ink down and like wiping it with your hand to get a speed line, great. And sometimes I think honestly, especially if you're a fast inker like I am, I'm like, the more I kind of put energy into it, no matter how it looks, you kind of feel the energy coming off a page like that. You just like, I mean, Sienkiewicz is a great example where you almost feel like the guy's out of control while he's drawing, and you feel it in the art as much as you see it, if that makes sense,
Yeah. No, it does. And actually that's like a perfect segue into Prairie Gods Race the Devil, which is your next Mad Cave book out September 4th. I think I said it I think I said it before we started recording, but the previews, the solicit describes it as like Twilight Zone meets Sin City. But talk about feeling like the guy, doing the art is out of control. I mean, look, Race the Devil. That's 100% like what you're getting. And once again, you're taking on a book, things that other artists complain about. You're you're drawing like, muscle cars. What is
It's
it?
all
Like a
muscle cars.
1970 GTO?
Yeah, 70 GTO and a 70 Chevelle going head to head. So,
but you were kind enough to send over issue 1, so I got a chance to read it, and I mean, absolutely loved it.
Awesome,
Blown
man.
away.
I appreciate that.
It I mean, I'm a fast reader anyway, and since doing the podcast and reading comics and scripting and, some short comics myself. When I read them, I really have to slow down and, focus on the
Yeah.
art but man, it was tough because the reading issue 1, I went through it almost as fast as that GTO was
I
going
love it, man.
because
That's how it should be, right?
it is kinetic. I mean, it just goes, doesn't let up. Even your talking head scenes between I don't know anybody's name.
Well,
Freddie, I
they're brand
think,
new to
and
you. Yeah, Freddie
yeah,
Davis and
yeah.
Anna is the girl he's talking to.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, even like the talking head scenes. I mean, there is just the dialogue flows really well. You're doing everything in terms of the writing and all the art. Becca
Yep.
Carey, fantastic
She's
letterer,
incredible. Incredible.
doing the lettering, and yeah, absolutely incredible. Like all of that flows, really well. But man, um,
Well, I appreciate it, man. And like I told you,
it's so good.
thanks,
It
dude. Thank you so
Yeah,
much. Well, I told you before we started recording, like, well, first of all, it's my first time writing, and it's cool coming off of Nottingham. I mean, I got to sit and read David Hazan scripts for almost 5 years now. So it's like,
yeah,
talk about going to school and seeing how like a proper, amazing comic script can look. But yeah, it's funny, like coming out of Nottingham, like it was a lot of horses, it was a lot of medieval stuff, and that was cool. But my long-term goals in comics are to do as much creator owned stuff, work with people like David. I love indies, like I love the indies I do. But I would love to draw some stuff for the big two, right? And you can't get that unless you're like get good at drawing as much as you can. So I kind of had the idea of doing this book where it's like every issue is something different. And this first one being a race car story, right? And I'm as terrified to draw cars as most artists are. So I was like, again, you want to learn how to do it for 24 pages. And I mean, I think 10 to 12 pages are pure race. So it's like it's a lot of cars.
yeah. I mean,
Um,
you pick 2 great cars to
what
have in the comic. They look great, you
Awesome, man.
know?
What the backstory on that is, so this issue is a shout out to my dad, who passed away in 2019, and he
Oh, I'm sorry to
just
hear that.
well, thanks, man. I appreciate it. But it was like the car he always wanted was a 70 GTO. And he always, like I said, I grew up on the farm. So my parents farmed. My mom worked out as well. But he wanted to be a race car driver. He always dreamed of that. But, in his era, coming from a small town, it wasn't the easiest thing to do. Uh, so I drew this in his honor. And he loved ghost stories and stuff, which I just love weird supernatural, whether or not it's
Yeah.
necessarily horror, just kind of
Yeah.
and I mean, this is not a spoiler alert. It's in the title. It's Race the Devil. Like Freddie
Yep.
Davis races the devil. And you find out how, but yeah, that's where that car came from because that was the car dad wanted to have.
Oh, that's
And
fantastic.
yeah,
I mean,
man. And I
that's
love
a
the
great
Chevelle.
story. I mean, it's a nice nice ode
Yeah.
to your dad.
It was fun to draw for that reason because it was kind of like, something I've really discovered in the last few years is like you have to do stuff you're passionate about, right? And I honestly, like at this moment in my life, I'm like I wanted to do some short stories, right? I love short stories. I love weird ghost stories. I love one and done comics. I have a
Yeah.
lot of people that because I don't think I come from music and I'm coming to comics, and I have a lot of people that are getting into comics, but they're so intimidated, because of what do I start reading? If I'm going to read this, even Nottingham, it's 3 volumes. It feels daunting to people that aren't in comics. So I also wanted to have some books that were one and done. Like here, read this one. It's over by the end, right? And
Yeah.
I love that stuff. I mean, I grew up watching like Star Trek, the original series, and I think I just love that kind of episodic type of story. Like I love a big story arc, and I think there's so many people trying to do the next like saga, where they're hoping to have this 20-year like long run of But I just like I love the way shows like Star Trek used to work, where it was like every week you show up and you get a one and done story. It's like super like very compressed storytelling. Like it has to make sense. I love that writing these books, because all 5 books, I should probably set this up, take place in a small town of Broadacres. And every book, it's like Sin City in that every book has a different main character, but they all live in that town or they're from that town. So they sort of cross paths and, um, you know, the main character of one story might just show up for a minute in the next. But anyway, I love that kind of short episodic stuff. And I like the challenge of like not having 5 issues to flesh out one story. It's a cool challenge to get 24 pages to like get some action in there, make it make sense. And, you know,
and tell a complete story.
Totally, man. And to have it just be entertaining and not, you know, I'm also like, I'm not making any kind of big statements with it. I just want to have some really cool stories that are like a good place to disappear into for.
Well, I think Twilight Zone, and I think Twilight Zone is kind of like a good touchstone. You know, I kind of miss that type of thing where it's not necessarily horror, but like Twilight Zone, you know, they had some episodes that would be considered horror, but they had some like psychological thrillers, they had regular thrillers, they had murder mysteries, they had kind of touching and emotional stories. Like it was, you know, that ran the whole gamut.
Well, that's cool.
So I like the idea.
No, and I love that because I was, you know, when they were obviously when you write something, then like the publisher, like Mad Cave, is like, okay, we have to, what is this? You know, how do we pitch this to people? And I think Twilight Zone just made sense for that reason because it, you know, I think music's like this, comics are like this, I think movies are like this right now, where it's kind of like, you know, if you say it's horror, everybody has an expectation of what that is, right? So I couldn't quite call it horror. That's why I'm like, well, it's kind of like Sin City. It's a bit like Hellboy because Hellboy is not all straight horror either, right? Like same deal. Like it's kind of, some of that stuff is really funny. It's not always heavy. It's not always not heavy. It's kind of like, I love that kind of thing where it's whatever you sort of want it to be.
Right.
And I like the kind of stories like this that also kind of leave you guessing a bit, like as to who these people even are, or like, what did I just, you know, I love that about Twilight Zone. Sometimes where you're like, okay, that was cool. Like, but I want to know more, but you're not giving me anymore. I love where the reader has to make up some of it in their own mind, right? Like be left to your own imagination. I love that stuff.
Oh yeah. I mean, the rest of the solicit from like previews is it says for fans of Hellboy, Westerns, crime stories, race car movies, lost treasure serials, and war stories. And I'm like, okay, I'm in.
All right, let's take a quick break. After a string of unexplained disappearances in the southern parts of the United States, retired detective Clint searches for his white trash brother. While searching for him, he ends up being abducted by aliens. He is now in the arena for Big Guns, Stupid Rednecks, an intergalactic cable's newest hit show, which puts him and other humans in laser gun gladiatorial combat, and his brother is the reigning champion with 27 kills. That's the premise for a new book from Band of Bards, Big Guns, Stupid Rednecks. I got a chance to see an advanced preview of this book, and being from the South, honestly, I was a bit skeptical going in, but they won me over, and nothing is more powerful than an initially skeptic convert in my book. In Jimmy's words, Big Guns, Stupid Rednecks is many things, but it isn't subtle. It tells you exactly what it is up front, then it delivers with a great premise, fantastic art, and a whole mess of fun. I had a great time reading Big Guns, Stupid Rednecks, and what I thought was going to be an indictment of redneck culture quickly showed it was actually a love letter. A family mystery, brother pitted against brother, aliens, fighting for profit in a big arena. This truly has it all. Issue 1 is out already, but you can still pick up a copy on the Band of Bards website, and current issues are available via your previews or lunar order form, or just ask your LCS. Don't miss it. Let's get back to the show.
You give a little bit of kind of like background as to who, you know, Freddy Davis is. Like you open up with getting a little bit of him. You have this great scene between, you know, him and a cop in the town.
Yep.
And then like you kind of get into your story.
The sheriff Ned Reedy, who he's the main character of the second book, Ned Reedy.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
Well, I just like that, you know, you throw in these other little snippets of things that like might be going on around town. Like the sheriff gets a call on his radio about something else that happened in town, and maybe that'll show up later. Who knows? But yeah, there's no real, there's no big like explanation. Like I love lore and I love world building, but sometimes, let's just get into it. Freddy Davis, he wants to know if he's the fastest guy on the track.
That's it. That's all he wants. And he saw something at one point that he thinks might be faster than him, and it's just stuck with him his whole life. And he's like, that's all I want to know.
And you got that little flashback scene where he's kind of like reading the letter in the map, and you got that old race car from like the 30s or 40s,
like 1933, 34.
Oh yeah, that was even that, like that stuff was just so good, and the coloring in that, I really liked how that all looked. But
that's my first color job. So because I love flat color. Like I love the stuff Luca did in Nottingham. Like it looks incredible.
Yeah. It's funny. Right before we got on, I was recording another episode with Dylan Gilbertson, Jason Piperberg, and Luca Romano.
Oh no way! Nice.
I was just talking to Luca. It's like 3 a.m. where he was in Italy.
Oh, that poor guy! Every time he does an interview, he just looks like death. It's always 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. Poor guy. Yeah. But he's a champ, that kid. He's up for it. So
yeah. It was fun talking to him, but
no, I love flat color, man. Like I had to set my books down here to make room. Oh, here we go. This is beside me all the time.
Oh yeah, the shadow.
Like, oh dude, like Richmond Lewis color. Like I eat this stuff up. Like it looks like comic books to me.
Yeah.
Also, I think like, with my style, like really kind of like I use a lot of blacks. My style is kind of built to, it sort of works really well, maybe even better black and white in some ways.
Yeah.
And I think flat color kind of accentuates that because the manicness of it is in the drawing and the colors is there to sort of pop it out. Right. So, and also I kind of wanted to see if people also dig that. Sometimes, when you're into something, I don't know if anybody else likes it. Like, maybe people don't like flat color as much as I do, but the more I've kind of done, the more people have been digging it. So, I think it works with the book, I think. So.
I thought it absolutely worked. I mean, I got done reading the first issue and I was just, I was like excited, right? I was already excited to talk to you. I like Nottingham, but like I got through reading it and I was just like, it was exhilarating. Like you really build the tension really well. And like you set the scene with like the practice run before he actually like races the devil. But just there's so many little nods in terms of the dialogue, Freddy talking to himself and like how it looks on the page that like you really build that tension well.
Awesome, man.
In that race. I just think it was just a really great story, great first issue. It looked great. Becca Carey's lettering was great.
Yeah, she's been like,
I can't wait to see
pro. It's crazy.
Yeah, she is.
Yeah, I'm glad, dude. I'm glad you like it. Honestly, again, it was a bit of a passion project of mine. Like, it was super cool. Like, Mad Cave is such a good publisher. They're, I came up with this idea. It's a very roundabout way that this came up, but I was between, I think, volume 2 and volume 3 of Nottingham. I had a Patreon going for a little while. And so kind of to fill space, I'd been sort of writing off and on an idea that maybe I would do sometime. And then I had this gap of time before the new issue of Nottingham started. So I had no work really going on. So I'm like, okay, well, I'll write this little story and just serialize it on Patreon. And I did that. And so that story actually is going to end up being book 2. It's the next book, Heaven's Trail. But I was at New York Comic Con 2 years ago, I think. And I was talking to Chaz Pangburn, and he was just like, oh, you wrote a story? How come we're not publishing it? Which, I mean, they're so cool that way, right? Like, I wasn't even trying to pitch it really in that, like, this is kind of this fun little, I told him straight up, I'm like, dude, I don't know if people are going to like these like weird little short stories that I draw, but like, he dug the idea, and then it allowed me to flesh out like 3 other stories. And then the whole kind of thing came together about it being all these different characters, but just taking place in one place. Yeah, it's cool, man. Like Mad Cave, props to them because they're so creator friendly. I mean, I don't know who else does a talent search like they do. Like that's and for them to keep doing it, like they don't really need to do it anymore, to be honest. Like they like you said with Dick Tracy and Flash Gordon, and I
Yeah.
mean Nottingham will continue in some way, shape, or form. They don't need to have new creators. And a lot of other companies, I think, would say, like, okay, that was great to kind of get us off the ground, but now we're good. But they're keeping it going because like they
Yeah.
found, it's a self-serving statement, but they found amazing talent. Like they have found, so many
Yeah.
people that just like, I always knew I would break into comics, but I thought it would take me quite a while to just like work my way in. But like something like this can really catapult somebody's career. Yeah, so
Yeah.
they're just very creator friendly, and they kind of let me just go with this thing, and I'm incredibly grateful. So if a few people get something out of it, even better.
Yeah, I think folks are really gonna like it, especially fans of Nottingham who like your work. But yeah, I can't wait to see the other stories. I love the concept. I love the idea of this town, Broadacres, and sometimes supernatural stuff happens in it. Because I love that kind of like Twilight Zone vibe. Or there was a TV show from the early '90s which was just about a town where weird things happen, like Erie, Indiana.
Oh
I
yeah,
think
yeah,
it was
yeah.
only on for like a season or two, but I just like little things like that. And I mean, Freddy Davis kind of reminded me of like Sam Elliott a little bit,
Yeah, he's got a
the
bit of that
actor.
vibe. Yeah,
A
yeah.
little bit of Sam Elliott, and you talking about your dad and the inspiration behind the car. And my grandfather, he passed away in '98, but uh he loved to drive fast. And they, not that he, I don't know if he had any aspirations of ever being a race car driver, but that was like the big joke in the family, that he could have been like a race car driver. And I remember this, that we joked at his funeral, from the church to the cemetery. Like we're sitting in the family limo, and we were all laughing because we were just like, "This is the slowest he's ever gone."
And he
And
probably he'd have hated that, hey?
yeah, absolutely. But Freddie Davis reminded me a little bit,
Oh, that's cool, man.
a
That's
little
really
bit of
cool to
him.
hear.
And so another reason to like it. But yeah,
That's
I
super
thought it was
cool.
really
And
good.
well, and man, it's cool because again, if this is, any kind of success, it'd be cool to do more, even in that I get to sort of it. Most of the stories are predicated on stuff I'm afraid to draw, like so the the third book is called No Man's Land, and it takes place in the First World War, which is, I'm a huge history buff, and World War
Okay.
One's like kind of a thing that I go down to many rabbit holes on. But I've been kind of scared to draw like a war book, right? Because it's a lot of attention to detail with like the right guns and stuff like that, and just battle
Sure.
scenes in general are a pain. I complained about how many times David made me draw these like medieval battle scenes, so now I'm doing like World War One battle scenes. So I
Yeah.
can't complain. I can't complain about what he sends me anymore.
Right.
Um,
Right.
but
Especially
yeah, man.
if you're gonna try and tackle trench warfare.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But it's cool because it allows me to just sort of like that's it allows me to do stuff that I'm a little afraid to do, draw some stuff that I haven't drawn. So every book is a little bit different in like where it takes place and kind of how it looks a little bit. So yeah, that's just super fun to me that you know, it's not just going to be the same environment all the time. And honestly, Nottingham was a bit like that because with the second volume, David took it out of England and then had
Yeah.
me researching French cathedrals and that kind of fun stuff.
Yeah.
So, but no, I'm glad you dug it, man. And it's cool because you get to, when you do like those one and done stories that are all kind of in different places, it it's cool to kind of like just get your head into that for that period of time. Like, for instance, I was drawing Race the Devil. I was watching like Days of Thunder, and Ford versus Ferrari. And I started watching all these, like I was watching Bullet again with Steve McQueen, one of my all-time faves.
That's a
But
fantastic movie.
Oh, dude, if you want to like draw muscle cars, like doing cool shit, it's like, come on. But so that was cool. And then you know, when that was over, and now I'm drawing the second book. I'm almost done it now. Heaven's Trail is it's like a Western, right? And I grew up watching Westerns and stuff too. So watching like Clint Eastwood movies again. And man, it's just cool to dive into these like completely different genres that tie into the same world. Like, I don't know. I'd imagine people like me can enjoy that too, where you kind of, again, it's like, it's almost like you're turning, the idea with this book is to be like B movies, right? It's almost like the idea is that you're almost like turning the channel on a Saturday morning and finding a new show, you know, kind of like 30s kind of serials or, you know, I'm a big B movie fan in general, like Army of Darkness.
Yeah,
I mean,
one of my favorites. Absolutely.
Come on. You know, like I love the Evil Dead in general, but like Army of Darkness has this, I'm like, that's my era. Like that movie came out when I was like 11 or something. So I was just like, I just love.
I think I was like, I think it was like 92 or 93 when it came out.
Maybe it was 93. Yeah, maybe 93 is right.
I'm a huge Army of Darkness, you know, Bruce Campbell fan. I think I had Tony Fleeks and Justin Greenwood because they did Army of Darkness forever. I think they're still. I think Tony's still writing it right now, but I think there's a different artist on it for Dynamite. But a huge Army of Darkness fan. Love B movies. I mean, I used to stay up as a kid and it was like watch Joe Bob Briggs' Monster Vision on USA here in the US. Awesome. And he would show, you know, B horror movies at night. I like something where with one of the things about, you know, Race the Devil and the other books that I can't wait to read is, you know, when they remind me of like something else and you kind of like get into that, you know, like you were just talking about what you were watching, but you know, think of like racing car movies and be like, yeah, you know what, I'm going to watch Cannonball Run or, you know,
dude, what a great movie. I love Cannonball Run, man. I love it. You know, it's like Smokey and the Bandit, same kind of stuff.
Smokey and the Bandit. Yeah. And, or like, you know, see a Western and then be like, man, you know what? I haven't watched Tombstone in a while, you know?
Oh, man. Come on. That's like one of my all-time favorites. I mean, I think that's like no secret that it's probably one of the, at least the top 5 best Westerns ever. I love it. Anyway, I can watch Val Kilmer play Doc Holliday all day long. Like,
me too. I mean, just like, there's so many things that I've forgotten, but like, there's so many iconic, you know, lines from Tombstone. I mean, Kurt Russell and Val Kilmer were like,
oh man,
you know, at the top of their game. And I think my favorite is when he's the one guy asks, "Where's Wyatt?" and Doc Holliday says he's down by the creek walking on water.
Oh,
it's like so good,
man. It's so good. But you're right. It's cool, and I love that too. When you read something that is kind of like sparks your interest to be like, oh man, like this kind of reminds me of this stuff that I want to kind of go rediscover or even discover for the first time. I absolutely love that. And honestly, like talking about B movies, I think one of the things that I love about it, and it's a restraint I put on myself with this series, is that like the idea is that they're B movies in spirit, in that like the best part about B movies is that you really come to appreciate what filmmakers can do with very little money. And they have to be creative because they can't, you know, they're not Kevin Feige. They can't be like, give me as many millions of dollars as like possible to get everything I ever dream of, you know, in this shot.
Yeah.
So, and it's cool because it's like they're forced to, and I think that's why I love the original Star Trek series too, in that it's suspended. You gotta like, you know, they're, you know, poor William Shatner's there with a styrofoam rock falling on him, but like, you don't care. You're like, because they're, I don't know. I love that where they're making do with a small budget and doing cool things with it. And that was one of the restrictions I put on myself. Like in Race the Devil, I'm like, of course, some of the racing, I mean, if you want a car to look like it's going fast in a comic book, it can't be on the ground. Yeah, it's got to be up. So it gives you the illusion of speed. But I'm like, nothing can be in this book that you couldn't directly put on film. That was like all the books have been like that to a degree, where it's like everything in here should be able to like be shot for like, $50,000 and, do like a grindhouse movie out of. So, and that was kind of fun because, you gotta, even the character design of the devil, that's something you would do in the 70s. Like it's right on the cover. So this is not a spoiler alert, but like, it wouldn't be like crazy CGI or any kind of makeup. I'm like, nah, you don't see his face. He's got like a mask on and that's it. Cause it's like, if this was done in the 70s and they had a small budget, that's it. You wouldn't see his face. And it's fun to write that way because in comics, it's kind of the opposite of why comics are beautiful in some ways. Cause, before big budget Marvel movies and that, like comics were the only way that you could see somebody fly or see, the X-Men or somebody like with a crazy character designs like come to life. Now you can see that in movies all the time.
Right.
And it took a little bit of the specialness out of what comics could give you up until like probably like the late 90s, right? 'Cause that's the only place you could get that stuff. But now I'm like, kind of neat to go the other way and like restrict myself in this medium and try to be like, how interesting can you make it if you don't get too crazy with like the special effects and make it look like a 70s movie, right?
Yeah.
So
No, I think that's fascinating. Well, I really think it works. So
I had a lot of fun with it, man. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think people are really going to dig it.
Awesome. I appreciate it, and I hope so for sure.
Hey, issue 1 is out September 4th. So,
yep.
You can go let your local shop know that you want it. Go get a copy. Usually you can get stuff from Mad Cave.
Yeah, you can order it right on their website.
Well. So,
yeah. In Canada, you can't, but in the US, if you're down in the US, you can order. And like I said, there's my cover, the A cover, and then Jason Sean Alexander did just a killer variant cover for Race the Devil. Dude, that came into my inbox. I got to tell you, I was like, two things. I was like, I drew this story for my dad. I had so much fun doing it, and it was cool to create, not thinking about the outcome where I'm like, oh, I hope everyone likes it, I'm like, I'm really enjoying doing this. Yeah. And then when Jason sent that cover, I was like, come on, like that. I like just created these characters and now he's doing this like crazy, beautiful painted cover. Like I was like, what a day. It was like one of the best days I've had all year. Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic. I think people are going to really like it though. I really do. I think listeners should definitely check it out. It was so much fun.
Awesome. I appreciate it.
Before I let you go, if you have a few more minutes, because we've been talking comics so much, but I was listening to One Bad Son and wanted to talk to you about it because I'm familiar with your artwork, but for whatever reason I missed and had no idea that you've basically been in this, in One Bad Son, this Canadian rock band for like 20 years now.
This is our 20th year. Yeah. Crazy. Yeah. 20. I've been saying crazy a lot. It's because there's been a lot of like mind-blowing stuff happening this year.
Right.
But yeah, and 20 years.
And you got a new EP, Too Young to Burn.
Well, the new single's Too Young to Burn. The new EP is called The New Shit.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. So it's The New Shit, Too Young to Burn, Sister Renegade, and I Come Alive were the 3 songs that
you can check those out.
Yeah,
they're streaming right now, and then the EP, there'll be 6 altogether, so there'll be 3 new ones. I think September 20th.
Awesome.
It's dropping. So
yeah, I like have not been familiar with it, and just knowing you from your comics work, and then started listening to it, and kind of like reading the story of the band in terms of the different things that how the original members came together. Some of the things that I thought were fascinating, that when I think it was when I don't know, your third album, One Bad Son, that your self-titled album came out, and I guess the story I had read that it was like some of the singles weren't getting radio play, so you just started showing up at Western Canadian like radio stations and like playing Scarecrows and like Rust Bucket live at the radio stations.
That was exactly. That was exactly it, man. We actually my drummer and I are doing a retrospective podcast right now for our 20th called One Bad Pod. You can check that out. It's got all these stories in it.
Awesome.
But yeah, dude, that was our first big label. We got signed to a label in 2010 or 2011, and then we had our first a major release come out. And very long story short, we put a single out. It didn't do shit. on Canadian radio, and they kind of were like, "Well, you got one more chance," and we wanted to put Scarecrows out, and they didn't want us to, and we were like, "Look, if you're giving us one chance, we're gonna." Kind of like I was saying about my artwork, where it's like we're gonna do the one we want to do. Like I can't, I don't know what's gonna hit with people, but I do. Like we all knew that that song was cool, or we at least really believed that it would connect with people. Anyway, we put it out, and it was kind of not doing much on the charts. So we just hatched this plan. Unfortunately, you can't even do this anymore because radio stations will rarely have bands in anymore. But in 2011, we just Kurt, like our drummer, he was in Vancouver, like a headquarters. He was phoning ahead to all of these radio stations across the country, and Adam and I, the guitar player at the time, just got into a car and just drove to radio stations, had our guitars, played the song, and then all of a sudden, stations started to add it. And next thing we knew, we were going like across the country. Went out to Toronto, and the thing got added, and it was our first top 5 in Canada. So that kind of launched the band into like much more success than we had the 10 years prior.
Right.
So
wow.
And then after that, yeah, dude, that led to everything else. We eventually got our first #1 in 2017, and just had crazy shows, open for the Rolling Stones in 2019. And yeah, man, my rock and roll life has been,
yeah.
it's
I
been
was reading
awesome.
You've opened for Def Leppard, I think Judas Priest,
Yeah, Priest, Shinedown. We did a tour with
Rolling Stones, and some of their shows, and
yeah, they had
I guess
they had one major show in Canada in 2019, so we were on that bill, which was like
awesome.
80,000 people watching those guys, man, out in a field in Canada, in Ontario. It was nuts.
That's awesome. And what was the first #1? Was that Raging Bull?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Raging Bull was our first #1. So, and then it's actually pretty crazy. Like, yeah, I could go on about it, but it was this kind of the synergy around it was that after that record, like we'd burned out. We toured so much. We did a massive tour in the US, opening for Sebastian Bach for like 3 months straight.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was, dude, amazing. It was great to see your country, like literally top to bottom, back to the top and back to the bottom.
And
but
Sebastian Bach, famously from
Skid Row.
From Skid Row, yeah.
Anyway, we got home, and shortly that was the end of 2019. Then the pandemic hit, and in that time, I was starting to draw again, because I always knew I wanted to do comic art, and music's been awesome to me, but I also knew that like I've always wanted to do this career. Like I just, and it was kind of time. Anyway, the timing it was really something else, because the pandemic hit just after I'd won the Mad Cave contest, and then Nottingham started when I was sitting at home with nothing to do.
Yeah.
And music was shut down. So it's kind of been the transition. So OBS we're not quite as, like, we don't tour as much as we used to, though. We're still playing shows and putting out music, and now it's music and comic books, and a bit of acting too on the side. So whatever creative stuff I can get into, I love it, man.
Well, the songs I listen to, I really love the sound. Like, to me, I was like, you don't hear on the radio anymore, like what I would consider like, rock and roll, like the stuff that I thought when I think of rock and roll, like 70s, 80s, 90s.
Dude, like I grew up on Zeppelin, and then like when I was a teenager, it was all Soundgarden, Alice in Chains. Like that was my stuff.
But maybe it's US radio, but unless you have satellite radio and the specific like rock channel, if you just have like the regular radio one, even like what the 93.3 here in Philly, like the rock station, you don't hear too much like what I would consider like new music, folks that are making it that sounds like rock and roll. There's a couple of bands that I do like Dorothy, and there's a few others. But yeah, I love the sound. I love your voice, man. Shane.
Oh, thanks, dude. I appreciate it.
But yeah, if listeners are curious about it, you can go on Spotify or look up their music. But I really liked "Made in the Name of Rock and Roll," the 2017 album that Raging Bull is on. But yeah, Scarecrows on One Bad Son. Sunfire from Orange City, I really liked. Into the Light, I think, was my favorite.
Dude, those are classics. They're classics.
That's your first album, 2006. This Aggression Will Not Stand, which I think is a Big Lebowski.
It's a Big Lebowski shout out. Come on, yeah.
And the Too Young to Burn and I Come Alive and Sister Renegade that are going to be on the new EP. I really liked as well. So yeah, definitely check it out. Give them a listen.
Jimmy, I thoroughly appreciate
it. Adding it to the playlist right away.
Buddy. Awesome. Well, hopefully you like the new stuff too when it comes out. And honestly, like, I just feel very like it's been a ton of work, but man, it's cool when people start to connect with your stuff. And now, especially, like, people are getting into the comics and music, and it's been cool, man. Like, I played some OBS shows in the last year that people have been bringing comic books to the merch table, and then, like, I'll do a signing for comics, and people are bringing like OBS merch to get signed there.
That's great.
Yeah, it's cool, man. Yeah. It's great, and honestly, that's the thing I love so much about just the world of art in general. Is it like, all it does is bring people together. And I know, like, there's people that like to sit online and they'll literally shit on anything because they don't have lives or talent or drive. But I don't really care about those people. But I do absolutely love that, like, this just brings everybody together. You go to a rock show or whatever you're into, and it's just, you don't know people's political affiliations. You don't know any of that shit. You just know that you're there for this, to just be there and, like, experience music together. Same with comic books, right? It's so cool going to, like, the first time I went to New York Comic Con, and people are coming up to me that obviously I've never met and just talking about how much they love Nottingham. And I love it, man. It's just like the arts do nothing but bring people together. Like, especially just if there's something that you dig, and like you started off the show talking about how there's something for everybody out there. You know what I mean? It's like anything that you're into, there's cool stuff to check out. So, big shout out to you too, man. Cause, indie comics, there's so many amazing indie comics, and, you're never going to really compete with the big two. Cause, Superman's been around since the 30s, same as Batman. Sure. That's a tough nut to crack. But you know what? Without people like you, like, championing indie comics, honestly, man, it's like, it means the world to us. So really, really appreciate everything you do.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I love doing it. I love comics. I love talking to, where else would I have an opportunity, to talk to you and talk comics and art and music and, like, learn something. And, even just the little bit of research that I do before one of these and kind of dig into it and, and go through an afternoon and listen to some of your songs, some of, One Bad Son songs. And
that's cool.
True Grit was the other one. I really like True Grit.
Speaking of Westerns, come on. That's, I mean, that's John Wayne's only Oscar in that, Rooster Cogburn, like, unbelievable. I like the new version too, but I mean, classic True Grit, John Wayne version is just like, one of my all-time faves.
And and you have in the True Grit song, you have I guess it opens with a clip of that, right?
Yeah. It's his famous line when he does the gunfight where he puts the reins in his mouth, and then he's got the two guns. Come on.
Yeah. Well, Shane, this has been absolutely awesome. But before I forget, shout out to my brother Bobby. If I haven't done it yet, I think I forgot. But my brother Bobby is the Cryptid Creator Corner's #1 most dedicated fan. Bobby listens to all my episodes, and he buys lots of comics. So I always shout out to Bobby. And Bobby's going to want a copy of Race the Devil.
Awesome. Cheers, Bobby.
All right, Shane. Thank you so much, listeners. Race the Devil, September 4th. By the time you're listening to this, issue 15 of Nottingham will already be out. So, and if you have not read Nottingham yet, I don't know what you're waiting for.
I'm going to tell you, Jimmy, I'll tell you this before I go, because this will come out after the last issue of Nottingham. You'll be crying. Yeah. There'll be tears in your eyes, man. When people listen to this, they'll be tearing up with that issue in their hands. I promise.
I think so. All right. Listeners, thank you so much for listening. We just recently passed our 250th episode of the podcast. Wow. So really appreciate you listening. And, we do it so you can hopefully find your next favorite comic. But Shane, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, dude.
All right.
This is Byron O'Neill, one of your hosts of the Cryptid Creator Corner, brought to you by Comic Book Yeti. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of our podcast. Please rate, review, subscribe, all that good stuff. It lets us know how we're doing, and more importantly, how we can improve. Thanks for listening.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Cryptid Creator Corner, maybe you would enjoy our sister podcast, Into the Comics Cave. Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
The great visionary leader of India, Mahatma Gandhi, said, "It is health that is real wealth, and not pieces of gold and silver." Listen to the Healthy Grocer radio show on your favorite podcast platform. We know that health is our greatest wealth, and we will be discussing all aspects of natural healing. Explore everything from supplements, superfoods, and healthy lifestyle choices to help conquer stress and boost productivity. Top industry experts and natural health professionals join us for a deep dive into our healing journey. You can find the Healthy Grocer radio show on demand every day, wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. And remember, health is your greatest wealth.